This podcast is brought to you by Bernie's Tap and Grill. It's family owned and operated since 1954, located across from Wrigley Field on Clark and Waveland. My dad hit a few home runs on the Waveland Avenue, and Bernie's was my dad's favorite place to go. It's got delicious food, 4 full-service bars, an awesome beer garden, a sidewalk patio cafe, and a cool upstairs area. It's the place I've always met my friends at before and after games. Go on by and tell Linda Dillman Jeff Santos sent you. Bernie's Tap and Grill, where you go when you go to Wrigley.
Sit back and relax. It's time for peanuts, popcorn, and Cracker Jacks.
Hey, how's it going? I'm your host, Jeff Santo. I'm here with my wife, the producer, for those who don't know, the technical wizard and mainstay of all this. Say hi, Christy.
Hi. Thanks, babe. I prefer to be in the background, but there's been some suggestions that I be on mic, so here I am. Hello.
This episode will have the second part of the Joe Mantegna interview, which is fantastic, and then our Cracker Jack segment at the end. But before I get started, I want to talk about last week's episode. We got some more information about the beer vendor that yelled at my dad when we were walking through the concourse in 1969. Beth Murphy from Murphy's Bleachers contacted me and said that Mike Royko, the legendary Chicago writer, wrote an article about it back then. And he said, get this, the guy was a White Sox fan.
Unbelievable.
Right? You know that South Side guy was warming up those beers. Who hires a Sox fan at Wrigley Field? They should fire the guy who hired the guy. Beth actually told me what the guy yelled at my dad.
What did he say?
He said this. Hey, Santo, I'd rather have Don Young's autograph.
Ooh.
Yeah. If you don't know the significance of that slander, keep following the show. You'll get the whole story eventually. Even for a White Sox fan, that wasn't cool. Now I understand why my brother said, hit him, Dad. I'm sitting there whining, right? Like, oh, scared Dad, don't hit him. But now I'm with Ronnie. Hit him, Dad, and hit him hard. Thanks, Beth, for that, and thanks for all the nice comments about what we're doing here. You can also write to us at jeff.ppcpodcast@gmail.com. You know, it was great hearing from Linda Dillman at Bernie's and from Beth Murphy from Murphy's Bleachers after our first episode. And it got me thinking about Wrigley Field and its two matriarchs. These two women have been running their corners for almost half a century, probably more. One's on Sheffield, one's on Clark, Wrigley in between them. Amazing. Wrigley wouldn't be Wrigley without the neighborhood, and the neighborhood is Wrigley. If Wrigley were a tree, its roots are connected to Bernie's and Murphy's. They feel all the cracks and the crevices. Wrigley is its own culture, and a big part of that culture is maintained by these two. Like a fishing town, but substitute the fish for baseball. And when Wrigley goes cold in the winter, they're the ones keeping the lights on and keeping guard. My father's ashes are spread around Wrigley, in the ivy, by the clubhouse door at third base. Wrigley is sacred family ground. Growing up at Wrigley, I saw it way differently than most kids, though. I thought of it as kind of a family home. That's where my dad worked. But it was more than the place of where he worked. It's almost like I felt a part of it. Like I had ownership, but not in an entitled way. It was just how I felt as a kid. I loved Wrigley Field. I loved it for all the love that was in it when we showed up there. The love from the players, the love from the fans, the people who worked there. When me and Ronnie roamed around, it seemed like we were always looked after, like someone was watching us. I always felt safe at Wrigley Field. It was like our summer home. But when my dad stopped going there, we stopped going there. And that's when I saw it in a whole other way. That's when I saw it from the outside as a fan. And that's when I realized that I grew up in a real special place. And I don't think I ever got used to that view of it from the outside. It was just difficult. Wrigley was so special to me that I couldn't see it without missing everything that was in it when I was a kid. It's probably why I eventually left Chicago and didn't know why. But I had to chase who I had to become because I knew I wasn't going to become my father. And like many who leave town, they eventually come back to their roots and cherish those memories again. And that's what this podcast is doing for me. Tying all those stories together. And it's filling me up again. And I love it.
It's filling me up too, babe. Seeing you, talk about these memories is filling me up too. And I'm sure I'm not alone.
That's awesome. That's awesome. In a way, I can only imagine the Dillmans and the Murphys experienced the same thing. Linda Dillman is family to me. Her and my dad had a really close relationship. I mean, she could be his younger sister. She worked as a ticket sales girl when she was young, when my dad was at the Hot Corner. And she's seen my dad through his whole career and his broadcasting career all the way to the end. So to have those two women call me after our first episode and say they like this show, I mean, it means the world. So I do have a message, though, for the Dillmans and the Murphys. Thanks for keeping the tree watered, preserving its roots. And I hope the generations that follow keep it up like you two have, because we all know that place is sacred ground. So stay tuned for Joe Mantegna's second part of his interview after this message. Gino's east of Chicago, doing deep dish in Chicago since 1966. Now has an LA location. Same great recipes, same great ingredients. That's no joke. Their deep dish tastes exactly the same as it does in Chicago. It's my favorite. I love the deep dish. And Gino's East is where I go when I want a taste from home. Named Best Pizza in LA by LA Times readers, and I certainly agree. Plus, there's a full menu of Italian favorites. Chicago Tavern-style pizza and the Italian beef sandwich. Dine in for great food straight from the oven. Or do carry-out or delivery. For great pizza and great atmosphere, go to 12924 Riverside Drive in Sherman Oaks, near the corner of Riverside and Coldwater Canyon, just off the 101 and the Coldwater Canyon exit. Or order online. Go to ginoseast.com.
And now getting back into your story, with David Mamet, you and David Mamet were the Chicago version of like Scorsese and De Niro. I mean, how did that become what it became?
Well, I mean, it's just the luck of the draw. Sometimes I equate it to, I would think that probably back in Shakespeare's time, he was writing plays, and there was this actor that lived on the block, Jimmy, and Will said to him, "Hey Jimmy, I wrote this play. You're an actor. Why don't you come and do my play?" And it's like, "Yeah, sure, Will. That sounds good." And they both had from similar backgrounds, and they kind of they can relate to it that way. I mean, Mamet and I were 18 days apart in age. He grew up on the south side of Chicago. I grew up on the west side of Chicago. It's different upbringing, though. I mean, his father, I think, was a labor lawyer or something like that. Very different in terms of that aspect of their life. He's Jewish, I'm Italian. A lot of similarities and a lot of differences. But again, it's the luck of the draw in the sense that I was doing theater. I was a struggling actor in Chicago. He was a struggling playwright in Chicago. And it was just one of those things where, and I remember my first meeting with him. What it was is this was like early 70s. I was with the Organic Theater at this point. I'd already done the play Hair. I'd done the play Godspell in Chicago. And now I gravitated away from doing musicals. And now I was working with this Organic Theater company. And I happened to stop at the Goodman to go visit some of my old teachers. I think it was probably like 1973, something like that. And the Goodman Theater was below ground behind the Art Institute at the time. So I remember distinctly, I'm going down these stairs to go see these teachers, and this guy's coming up the stairs. And he was kind of natty, and to this day, that's David. He's kind of nattily dressed. He's got a scarf. He's got a thing, and I'm dressed like a shit bum, I'm like, and he stops me, goes, "Excuse me." He goes, "I saw you in this play," and I think I'd just done the play. I think we were doing the play, The Wonderful Ice Cream Suit, at the time at the Organic, which was a successful play we were doing at the time, a Ray Bradbury play. He goes, "I happen to come and see your play." He says, "I'm a playwright. I grew up in Chicago. I'm just back from, I was in Cabot, Vermont. I was going to school and teaching up at the school there. He goes, I really, like what you do. And he says, someday I'd love to, maybe we'll do a play together, one of my plays. And I'm like, yeah, great. And I'm thinking, who's this crazy guy in a tweed jacket? Okay, sure. And, next thing I know, and the reason he was at the Goodman is he was trying to peddle some plays to the Goodman. He was trying to get them to produce something of his, And so just one thing led to another. He ultimately, and what's funny is the first thing that I get offered of his, I turn it down, because what it is, he finally reaches the Organic Theater with his plays, and he wants to do this play, Sexual Perversity, in Chicago, which was a wonderful script. But this was during our summer break with the Organic, where, we had a whole season of plays that we would do, but we would depend on grant money and stuff like that. But in the summer, the money ran out and people would have to go off and get other jobs. And I got cast as the understudy in the play Lenny that was being done at the 11th Street Theater at the time. And it was a good paying job. It was like $250 a week, which was a lot back then. The Organic, we were lucky we make $25 a week because we'd split up the box office. So I told him, I says, I can't do the Organic summer play because I got this job as an understudy. And I'm also in the play, but I also understudied the lead in Lenny. Never went on, but whatever. But that summer, I had a good paying job, and I had to take the job. So I turned down that, Mamet and Stuart Gordon, who was the director at the time of the Organic, said, well, Dave would love you to play this character, the lead character. I said, yeah, no, thanks, but no thanks. Thank God he didn't hold it against me. Because the next time he asked me to do a play was when he did this, it's called The Life in the Theater, which I did with Mike Nussbaum in Chicago with the original production. But again, back in those days, we were still in a vacuum. We were doing our stuff in Chicago, but you couldn't. It wasn't going anywhere beyond that. And it wasn't until Grease happened and all of a sudden became this big phenomenon. And then, as it turned out, Mamet started to get a little juice going. And finally, what happened for him is. And during that time, I liked his writing because I could relate to it. Usually, as you may well know, back then, especially if you go into the 40s and 50s, the theater writing, a lot of it was done by New York kind of playwrights. And so everything had a New York kind of flair to it. The actors sounded like they were from New York. The places they talked about were New York. But here was a guy who was, he was like a these, thems, and those guy. And he's talking about places I could relate to, and his words, the way he wrote, that's the way I talked, I felt. So it wasn't foreign to me. And I think maybe that's what caused our attraction, him and I. And so I would do these little things for him. As his career started to get more attention in New York, he would have me do little readings for him at the library in Chicago. And like I said, I did Life in the Theater, but I didn't do the New York production because New York, they don't want the Chicago guys. They got their own actors over there. But thank God, finally, now at this point, I'd moved to California. I had done, Bleacher Bums, had been running all around, done that. But now I'm in California just doing little bit parts, doing some theater, doing bit parts on TV shows. When Mamet, God bless him, doesn't forget, calls, and by now he had a little juice going because he had done American Buffalo on Broadway, and with Robert Duvall, and it was fairly successful. And so now producers were paying attention to him. So now he had this brand new play called Glengarry Glen Ross. And of course, they wanted the producers wanted to hire all these big stars to be in it. And so for this one main role of Ricky Roma, they first reached out to Al Pacino to do it, the play. He turned it down. It was a new play. He was busy doing other things. Then they went to Robert De Niro. He turned it down. He was doing other things. And Mamet, God bless him, told the producers, he says, look, I'm not going to go through every, name guy in the business for these roles. Or I'm not going to go through every famous Italian actor for Roma, not other famous roles for the. He says, let's just do the play with the people that, I feel are right for it, the Chicago guys types. And the producers, thank God, went along with it. And so I get this call from Dave saying, I got this new play. We're going to open it in Chicago. We're going to see how it goes. And if it's successful, we'll go take it to New York. And I had nothing else really going in LA. I was with my wife and I said, hey, Dave, sure. And I remember he sends me this play, Glengarry Glen Ross. I read it. Now, again, having never lived in a house, here's a whole play about real estate. I don't know what the hell they were talking about. there's lines in there about the leads and this, and I'm thinking, what the fuck is this? So he calls me the next day, goes, how'd you like to play? And I didn't have the heart to tell him I didn't understand what the hell half of it is. I said, Dave, I didn't get to it yet. I'm going to read it tonight. I'll call you tomorrow. So now I called some relatives of mine who were in real estate. I said, will you explain to me what this stuff is? What's a lead? And so then they educated me. So now when I read it, I can at least understand. Okay. And again, then I read it and I thought, well, it seems like a really wonderful part and the play seems good, but what do I know? But hey, it's an offer and it's Mamet. I love Mamet. Let's give it a shot. And jump cut to where, boom, we take it to Chicago. We do Chicago. We take it to New York. The play opens. The show wins the Pulitzer Prize. I win the Tony Award. I couldn't have written a better script for myself.
Oh, man.
And then I remember the night I won the Tony Award, some of the press people come up and ask me, they go, so you got to remember, this is 1984. And I started my career in 1969 with Hair and kind of banged around up until 84. So I remember one of the press guys we're at the Waldorf Astoria for the after party of the Tonys. The guy comes up to me and goes, so you won a Tony Award for, your Broadway, here I was a fairly new guy. I mean, nobody really knew who I was. He goes, how do you feel? He goes, what's it like? I said, I'll tell you what it's like. I said, it's like winning the lottery, but I've been buying tickets for 15 years.
Right.
In a way, that's kind of but that's what paying dues are. So I mean, I look back on it, all that time I put in, doing this, and everything you do leads to something else. And like I said, the things I had done in the past led me to creating that relationship with Mamet. So that's where that came from, and that became the beginning of a beautiful career with him. In a sense, we wound up doing movies together. House of Games, Things Change. Other stuff. The other Speed the Plow I did on Broadway with Madonna. And I mean, I just talked to him yesterday. So I mean, we're still tight. We still talk about doing things together. But again, I refer back to that. Bill Shakespeare and his friend Jimmy down the street. I mean, I got lucky. If I'd have been born in any other city, and I'd like to think the two of us, profited from that relationship, and it's just I feel very blessed that it worked out that way.
And the way you deliver the lines, you had that sharp cadence. I mean, it's almost like you were meant to, speak those lines, and maybe, obviously he felt that too, right? I mean,
well, I think so. I mean, because he knew my background and stuff like that. Even like when we did the movie Things Change, where I played this low-level kind of mobster, he let me cast a few of my uncles to play some of these low-level guys because they really were,
Right.
And they already really talked like that and looked like that and acted like that. So, I mean, it was great. So, I mean, Mamet has that gift is, to write about these kinds of characters and people that he didn't really grow up with. But I think he was like a sponge and saw, them and that's why, we laugh about it. There were guys in the play Glengarry on Broadway, there was at least a couple I could name that were, guys that had done time. I mean, these were guys that were, they were good actors, but they also had backgrounds, you know what I mean?
Right. Those are the guys that are helping at that level, right? It's like,
these are the real deal. When they speak those lines, that's them. That's coming right from them, And I think Dave really loved that, appreciated that.
Yeah, and you also like starting so young, like at 19, and having all that experience under your belt. You were only 34 at that time or something, right? So you're
exactly. I think it was like 33, and that's what paying dues are about.
Yeah, right.
And I even tell people, I say, and I tell this to young students or when I speak at classes and stuff. I say, in this business, in life, even you pay your dues one way or another, and sometimes you pay them on the front end, and sometimes you pay them on the back end.
There you go.
Like some people, when you pay them on the front end, it's almost more difficult in the sense, like in other words, there are some people that get instant success.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, because of maybe because they're born with a silver spoon in their mouth, whatever. But it's not like they've now avoided the journey.
Right.
They're going to have to make that journey and pay their dues. But now they're paying the dues in front of the world. And it's a little more difficult because you every time you make a mistake, they're all, oh, look at you. You're screwing up. You're da-da-da-da.
Right.
So if you can kind of pay your dues and just make those mistakes and learn from it, then when It's like knocking on a door. You keep knocking on that door, and on the other side of the door is where you want to be. And that door, it keeps inching open a little more each time. That finally, when it finally opens, you're ready now to walk in, and you close that door behind you. It's like, I'm in now. I'm not going back. But sometimes, for some people, that door whips open instantly, and they jump in and they think, "Oh God, I've got it made. It's all going to be great now." No, you're a bit better off creeping that door open a little at a time.
Right, no doubt, man. And the Organic Theater Company, did you guys? Can you speak a little bit about that? Because it almost seems like, did you have a plan with that? Did you know, was that your minor leagues to the big leagues of acting?
As it turned out, it was. I mean, it was a wonderful experience. I mean, Stuart Gordon, God bless him, rest his soul, he was a brilliant mind. He was the head of he started the Organic Theater Company, started in Madison, Wisconsin, the University of Wisconsin. Right. I got turned on because one of the guys in Hair with me, in the cast of Hair, was Andre DeShields, who went on to become, a very well-known actor on Broadway. Was the original Wiz in The Wiz, won the Tony Award just a few years ago for, it's based on the name of the play. But anyway, very well-known actor on Broadway. He was part of that group in Madison, Wisconsin. And I remember they got thrown out of the theater, out of Madison, because Stuart, with his imaginative mind that he did a production of Peter Pan, but he had Tiger Lily naked and stuff like that. And so, I mean, he thought out of the box, you know what I mean? And that's what the Organic was about, very much experimental theater, very much like Paul Sills and what was going on, that kind of movement in Chicago at the time. So he relocated his theater from Madison, Wisconsin, from the university to Chicago. And I because of Andre, I saw the play Warp. They did this play Warp, this 3-part science fiction play that was just unbelievable. It ran for like a year in Chicago. Of course, they took it to Broadway. And it wasn't meant for Broadway. It was it should have been better off Broadway, because they made ray guns out of soup cans and stuff like that. But that's what made it great. They took it to Broadway and they spent all this money on props and stuff, and it kind of changed the play. But I think that was a lesson learned. But anyway, Stuart and that company, I mean, wonderful people in it. I mean, Dennis Franz, as you said, that's how I met him. He joined that company. John Hurd was part of that company. Cordis Fire was part of that company. Stuart's wife, Carolyn Gordon, Meshack Taylor.
Oh, yeah, Meshack.
Who was part of that company. I brought him in because I'd done Hair with him. So he and I kind of auditioned for that together. And we both joined the company at the same time. So there was a rich history in that company. And I did that for 5 years. And yeah, as it turned out, it kind of led me to that next level. But it's not that next level was any higher caliber or doing anything better. It's just that they're doing it on a bigger stage with a bigger audience, and they're throwing more money at it and stuff like that. I often tell people, I say, they go, "What was the best time in your career?" And I say, you know what? It's all been great. And I got to tell you, even to this day, I love what I do. I love being an actor. But I said, but I don't love it 1 iota more than when I did it in high school. In other words, they're paying me a lot more money to do it, where I got nothing then. And their tickets were $1 then, and now a ticket on Broadway might be $400. I said, but my enjoyment is exactly the same. I don't like it 1 iota more than I did when I did it in high school. And I think I think you talk to athletes, I'm sure your dad would say the same thing. I enjoyed it as much playing Little League and I did playing it, with the bigs. That doesn't change. The love of what you're doing, the arena you're in that's irrelevant.
Yep. Is that path gone now? Like what you guys did? So many of you did that. Like you guys came up with such a great group that you just spoke about, and then also the Gary Sinise's and the
right,
and William Peterson and all those guys that are doing it too. I mean, you guys really, it was the path. It was like you learn your craft on stage, and then you make the transition. It doesn't seem like that's going on today.
It's a little different now. I mean, sometimes I blame the internet in the sense that because what's happened is you had to really work at getting something where to put something together, and now the task was to put it in front of people so that their eyes can see it. So in other words, to find that audience, and so you had to really work. Like for Bleacher Bones, we did this play. We believed in it. We did all this research on it. We did all this improvisation, created the play. But now those first people who come to see it out of curiosity, they've got to love it to spread the word along. Hey, go see this, go see this. But nowadays, when you got the internet, you've got people who all of a sudden have an instant audience of possibly millions and millions of people. So if they can just spark their interest with one little thing, and all of a sudden you hear like, oh, something's trending and something, I was like, well, you know, and I understand it when if you can back it up and if it's good and it has legs, then it deserves it.
Right.
But in some instances, you just have people that have become, you know, I hear about influencers and stuff like that.
I know.
What do you know, really?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I think you got to earn that. And nowadays, I just think it's almost like it's just a little too easy to grab the ear of many people just by being, whether it's outrageous or different or crazy or, you know what I mean?
And there's a lot to getting to know someone through the process that you went through, you know, of just the relationships. Like, you're also a team player on your path. Like, you guys not only had individual pursuits, but you guys worked as a team. You helped each other up at that.
Oh, yeah. Well, just like in sports. No, like sports. What baseball team made it because one guy was great and everybody else wasn't. You know, and everybody's got to share, whether it's whatever the sport is. You know, absolutely. You know,
and also your relationship with your wife, Arlene. I mean, talk about that. You guys met each other here, didn't you?
We met in high school. I mean, she was in high school. I was in junior college. But what it was is I went to Morton East High School and junior college. She went to Morton West High School in Berwyn. They would do district-wide plays. You know, and every fall they would do a district-wide play so that you can audition whether you were in Morton West High School, Morton East High School, or Morton Junior College. So what happened is we both did those, you know, she was in the high school. She was like a sophomore in high school. I was like a first year student in junior college. We do these musicals. I did Brigadoon. I was one of the leads. She was in the chorus. We did Little Me. I was one of the leads. She was kind of in the chorus. But we knew each other. Now I leave. I'm gone. I leave the junior college. I go to the Goodman. Blah blah blah. She goes on with her life. But she's thinking of going to acting school. So Jack Leckel, who was our head of the drama department at the time of the 3 schools, said, well, you ought to contact Joe Mantegna. You know, you were in a couple of plays with him. You were in a chorus of You know, call him maybe. So she did. And we still talk about it. That we met. I agreed to meet because I remember her from the plays. We met at a place called The Brief Encounter, which was right over there, right by the Wrigley building. And so I met with her for lunch just to tell her about, like, yes, I'm a student at the Goodman, and maybe you would like to, maybe that'd be something for you. Then I could tell the way she was talking that I don't think she really wanted to be a serious actress. She was more like into show business, like maybe do a musical, like, you know, on that level, because she was a good singer. And I said, well, this Goodman is very serious. We do kind of pretty heavy. I don't know, there's speech classes, and I don't know if you want to, but you want to try, go ahead. So anyway, I didn't see. Now a year or so passes. The hair auditions happen. Starts 5,000 people audition for that play. And you keep getting callbacks. And I did like something like 6 callbacks. By about the 6th callback, I show up. And who's in there there's maybe 100 of us now. It's been whittled down from 6,000 to 100.
Wow.
Is Arlene. And this girl that I did plays. I said, hey, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? Oh my God, we're both here for this callbacks. Well, to cut to the chase, from that last audition at the Schubert Theater, where they had maybe 100 of us, and now they're going to finally whittle it down to like 30 to be the cast of Hair. And what they did is after we did all our singing and movement, and they had us do all this stuff, they lined us up on a stage. And I remember Rado and Ragni, the guys that wrote the play, and Tom O'Horgan, the director, was very famous at the time. Quick goes down the line and goes, you step out, you step out, you step out, you step out, you step out. And we don't even know what this means. And I remember I was the last one. He said, and you on the end, you with the mustache. I think because I was in a band then, at least I had long hair. He says, you with the long hair, you step out. I step out. And then he goes, okay, all of you who just stepped out, everybody else, thank you. But you who just stepped out are the cast of Hair. And of course, Arlene was one of them. But what was really great is she was chosen to be one of the leads. She played Jeannie. I was chosen to be one of the tribe. I was the chorus boy. In fact, I was the lowest guy on the chorus. I was what they call the swing guy. So in other words, not only am I in the chorus, but I'm like, there's a scene where they throw live chickens on the stage. I have to go pick up the chickens and stuff like that. But at least I'm in. You know what I mean?
Right.
And as it turned out, I mean, we opened the play in Chicago. So the chorus girl is now one of the leads. The lead guy from high school and junior college is picking up chickens, but I'm in the play. I had one number. I did the flag song. That was my one number I did in the play. But as it turned out, because of my training, because was trying to be a serious actor, and some of the cast were wonderful singers, rock and roll type singers, but Tom Morgan liked that raw talent. But the reality was 8 shows a week, on a Broadway schedule. You got to back it up.
Yeah.
Now that's what separates the men from the boys. And so a lot of them were falling off to the wayside. They couldn't hack it. So I worked my way up. I became the understudy to the lead of Berger. And then within the show opened in October, by February, I was the lead.
Wow.
I went from the
rises.
Man. Yeah, I went from the chorus to the understudy to taking over the role, and then never looked back. I played then the lead of Berger for the rest of the run.
Oh, that's a similar moment to I got to go to my dad in the minor leagues, where when he first went to rookie ball, they didn't play him, and it was a catcher who was on the Cubs wouldn't play him, and he got signed as a catcher. And after a while, he just got sat there. That guy's not playing me. The third baseman is making error after error, and my dad could play third. Right. And he just went up to me and says, "Yeah, you got to put me in. I can play third." And he kept hounding day after day. And finally, the guy almost wanted to bite him. And then he put my dad in, hit a home run, and that was it. And it's kind of like, right. Some people have to fail for you to get that shot.
Exactly. No, exactly right. That's what happened.
Was there a thing that, like, for my dad, obviously you got to hit and you got to field. You got to be consistent. What was the consistency you needed for being an actor, show after show?
Consistency is the correct word. I mean, I think it's understanding that you got to be ready to play, to use the baseball analogy, every day, all the time. You know what I mean? And so you have to do whatever prep you need to do to get yourself at that place. So in other words, you're doing 8 shows a week, and it's demanding. It's physical. It's demanding on your voice. It's demanding on your body. So actually, the training I'd had at the Goodman was very helpful. At the time when I was doing it, I thought, "What the hell? I'm spending all this time going, doing all these voice exercises, and then all this physical movement being weird." But then when I was now in this play, I realized, boy, those voice exercises were important, because it, first of all, kept me from getting hoarse, from losing my voice, which would be disastrous. There'd be a way to lose your job. And also becoming aware of your body and doing those movement classes made you understand that your body is an instrument, and that's important as an actor too. So these are the things that, and you needed to know. You had to have some discipline. I can't go out partying every night. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Be like some crazy rock stars, like, "Yeah, I'm going to go party all night," and expect the next day to be, you're not going to last. You're not going to last long. And I mean, because a play, it's not like a movie where you just, do a little bit and then when it's all done, it's all done. That's why I always used to laugh with kids in the cast would come up to me and say, "Hey, my mother's out there tonight. Do a good show." And I'd say to yourself, "What, you think I don't try to do a good show every night?" Because they go, somebody's mother's out there every night. I said, "Why should your mother be so special?" You know what I mean? I'm not going to do a special performance for your mother and then kind of let off. There's nobody's mother's out there tomorrow. So take it easy. No, you got to remember, there's somebody's mother out there every night. So you got to give it the best that you can do. So it's that discipline, that understanding. That's a responsibility. Whether you're an athlete, an actor, a musician, whatever it may be.
You're a pro, man. You're a pro.
You got to be. That's what separates the pros from the wannabes. You know what I mean?
100%. Yep. And, going back to Arlene, you guys you've been together over 50 years, almost married.
This is our 54th year, and she's literally 100 feet away in another room right now. We brought up 2 children. They're adults. Got a daughter's going to be 36. Another one's going to be 33. Our oldest daughter has autism. That's been a challenge into itself. But if anything, I think it's brought us even tighter. Because that's one of those things that when something like that happens, that either destroys a family or it brings it tighter. And that was our first child. And so it was like, wow, that's a thing you didn't expect. But no, you go with it and you deal with it, and it's fine. And it is what it is. I live by the motto, everybody's got a story and nobody gets a free ride. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
You could be the most successful, important figure on the planet. They got a story, and they don't get a free ride either. You dig deep enough, everybody's got some something going on that,
No doubt.
if you could change, you would change it, but that ain't the way it goes. So you play the cards you're dealt in life and hope for the best. That's all.
But what a beautiful story, man, to have a life partner like that,
Yeah, I agree. And it's not always, I equate it, people go, how do you make that work? And I say, you know what? Well, and I equate it sometimes to being on a roller coaster. I said, roller coasters can be the most fun thing in the world. It can be the scariest thing in the world. And I says, and you jump on that roller coaster, and sometimes you starts off and you go, oh man, this is going to be great. Then all of a sudden you hit some curve that's like almost throwing you out. And you go to yourself, holy shit, this is scary, man. And now you have a choice. I could jump out. There's another roller coaster I see going by here. Let me jump into that one, But you may find out you jump in, you're just in another roller coaster.
Yep, right.
So what you got to do is that scary turn that you're going through, you got to hold on just that much tighter. Give it more of your attention. Let's get through this. Oh, and now it's smoothed out a little. Oh, and now this part's even better than the last one. And there's another scary part. But I got through that last one. If I believe in this ride, it's supposed to be, when I got on it seemed like a good idea. Let's give it his best shot.
Right.
No, I'm not saying it always works. Some people deserve to fly out of that roller coaster and go somewhere else because it's just like it just didn't work out. But if you can get through those rough turns, sometimes you find out the ride only gets better and it gets more familiar because you're doing it more and more, and you realize, you go with it. And that's the way it's been, for 54 years now. I always tell her, being in the profession I'm in, it's easy enough for people to say, oh, wow, you get all the attention. You are, you've got the spotlight on you, and, and your wife is somewhat, in the shadows. But anybody who really knows us and knows her, understand. And I always tell her that. I says, you're not in the shadows. You're actually the light, because I'm the clown out there entertaining everybody. But she's the one over here she's the one behind the curtain. She's the one.
Real.
She's keeping it real, and she's actually allowing me, giving me the freedom and the ability to do what I need to do to be that guy out in front of the curtain saying, eh. But it's actually the wizard, like the Wizard of Oz, the guy behind the curtain. It's actually making the I'm Oz, So anyway,
it's just a beautiful story, man. Because so many people don't stick together, and to see that, I mean, it took me a long time to find my wife. I'd been married together for 15 years now, and I was solo for a long time in my life, and
I know
it's just so much. There's just to have someone in your corner all the time,
right?
And to figure yourself out even more, because there's another layer that if you don't have a woman with you, you don't figure out that layer so much.
No. I didn't even have a sister. So I didn't even understand very well.
Dude, it's just a beautiful story, Joe. And tell her I said hello.
I certainly will, Jeff.
And few last things.
Okay.
David Rossi.
Yeah.
You've been playing David Rossi since 2008 for Criminal Minds. What did you see in that character that brought you to it?
Well, not much different than what I see in any character. Ultimately, when I was offered that role, ironically, my dear friend Meshach Taylor, God rest his soul, this was one of his favorite TV shows. He used to tell me, he says, man, you got to watch this new show called Criminal Minds. This thing is fantastic. It's wonderful. And I don't watch a lot of TV. I usually watch sports or news. And I'm not like I don't get caught up in series normally. I'll watch old Seinfeld reruns or King of Queens just at night to fall asleep because it's amusing. But I wasn't a big TV watcher. So I never even watched the show. But then all of a sudden I get this call from my agent, and I'm not a planner either. My career has always been one series of like, hey, you get a call and they say, hey, they weren't interested in you, and they send you the script. And you go, okay, yeah, I kind of like this. Anyway, I get this call saying, the Criminal Minds, this Mandy Patinkin is leaving the show. They're kind of caught in a lurch because he kind of left unexpectedly, and it would be kind of like one of the major roles on the show. Would you be interested? I said, wow, Criminal Minds, boy, my dear friend Meshach, he loves this show. I said, well, let me look at a few episodes. So they sent me tapes of these episodes, and they sent me the current ones, some of the very early ones, and then some of the current ones that they just were doing without, because Mandy had left the show. These were episodes that they had just done without his character, and they had to scramble without this one character. And as I watched it, I thought to myself, wow, it was like watching a baseball team, because I thought, I loved all the individual, but by him leaving the show, because when he was on it, he was kind of like the lead guy. It was almost like, leading the parade. But now with him gone, it put the focus more on the other characters individually. And I thought I really liked the writing, and I liked these personalities, because everybody's characters were so well written. I thought, now it looks like they're able to really shine, because they have to step out. They have to almost like carry more weight. And so when I saw that, I said to myself, and again, I made a baseball kind of comparison. I said, they lost their left fielder. They lost Billy Williams. I'll play left field. I can do this. I'm going to do my version of it. But it's a team. This is a team. It's an ensemble show, and to me, that was the beauty of it. If it would have been I gotta decline this. I got a FaceTime coming in all of a sudden. Because to me, that was the beauty, or that's how you get longevity. If you got a show like, let's say, Magnum PI, you lose Magnum, you got a problem. You got a show called House, you lose the guy, the doctor, you got a problem. But Criminal Minds, my feeling was, this ensemble is terrific, and I liked every single one of those other characters. I thought to myself, all I got to do is, bring what I'm going to it. So when I met with Ed Bernero, who was the showrunner, first of all, he was a Chicago cop, ex-Chicago cop. He was Italian. And the third thing about him, which was almost the deal breaker, was he was a Sox fan. Because he was from the South Side. But I even told him when we had our first meeting, I said, Eddie, this is perfect. I said, you want me to do your show? I said, the only thing wrong is that you're a Sox fan, I'm a Cub fan. Otherwise, you're Italian and you're an ex-cop from Chicago. I said, I think 2 out of 3 isn't bad. We laughed, And as it turned out, once we opened our restaurant, Taste Chicago out here, in a way, it was great because it you got
to take that?
No.
Okay.
I'll get it after I call. It's a FaceTime. From a friend of mine in New York who's just FaceTime. I forget where I was.
Just talking about the show, about the ex-cop.
Oh yeah, right. So in other words, so the so it worked out that way. In other words, let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
And what I was really grateful I was able to do, as it turned out, as I got on the show, started doing it, then I started directing some episodes. What I really wanted to do was bring in my friend Mishak to be on the show, because he was his favorite show. And as it turned out, the guy had just been diagnosed with cancer. Yeah. And so my assistant Dan wrote this episode where he, we bring in his character as being my. I wanted my character to be connected with the military because I do a lot with the military. And I thought that would be important. So my character's a Vietnam vet. I bring Mishak in this episode of that. He's my commanding officer from Vietnam, and he's homeless on the streets of L.A. And also was able to bring in this place called New Directions, which is a place for homeless, drug-addicted, people, vets who have those kinds of problems. And I actually used that real place in the episode. And so to be able to do that, bring Mishak in to play the part, then he wound up doing a second episode while he was still fighting cancer. We did a second episode. And then he passes away, the actor, who was also one of my dearest friends in the world. So we started our careers together in hair. And to do that third episode that I directed the second and third that involved him, that we did his funeral. And I actually brought real Vietnam vets to be in the funeral scene. I flew in 2 3-star Marine generals from Washington, D.C. to do the part where the flag's given to the family. And at the very last shot of the episode, you see me putting a picture on the casket. And it's a picture of supposedly our platoon in Vietnam. There's a picture, young Mishak and young me. I put my hand on that picture. And so for me, there was life imitating art and art imitating life. That not only was I burying this character, I was burying one of my best friends in the world. And so that, to me, that was such a beautiful opportunity to have been able to do that. So my whole Criminal Minds experience, that is one of the most poignant aspects of it. But it's been a beautiful ride ever since. It's a beautiful group of people. We're still doing it. Now we're on Paramount Plus. We're streaming. we're picked up for another season. There's a possible writer's strike that we're having to wait before we can start working again. But this will be our 17th year doing the play, my 15th year doing the play, TV show. But again, I just feel very blessed in everything I've done. I mean, this is the most current thing, the latest thing that I've done, and it's given me the ability to stay home more. Yep. That was nothing I was looking for. I've traveled all over the world, and I've taken the family with me all over the world. Well, my oldest daughter with her autism and stuff, it got to be, especially as they got older, it was more important to have some be grounded, not have that kind of gypsy lifestyle.
Yep.
We're just dragging them all over the world. Yet I didn't want to be one of his dads who were like, okay, I'll be gone for a couple months, enjoy yourselves. No. So having a series based here in LA was a dream come true.
Perfect. You've been with that character for so long. Has part of that character, does it play in your regular life? Do you find taking some character traits from?
Well, I'll say this. I learned, and it was when I worked with Don Belisario on a series I did. It was short-lived called First Monday. It was about the Supreme Court. He gave me some good advice. He says he knew I was new to doing series television. I'd done theater and I'd done movies and I'd done a couple of miniseries. But I hadn't done a role that conceivably I was going to now continue for perhaps years. And he says, when you get on a series, think about it and try to incorporate a lot of yourself, as much as you can of yourself, into that character. Because you may be doing it for years and years, and you want to be able to tap on something you're familiar with and that you know and you're comfortable with. So it's not like you're creating some weird character that you have to invent things about.
Right.
So David Rossi, first of all, I named him after a real person. I named him after the first LAPD cop who testified in the O.J. Simpson's trial. Because the whole world was watching that trial at the time. And he was the first guy who testified. And I thought, here's this Italian cop, he had kind of whitish hair, who was getting ready to retire. And I remember the defense attorneys kept him on the stand for 3 days. And you could tell they were trying to turn the whole trial around to blame the LAPD for this murder. And I thought this guy handled himself with such poise and taste and, would not allow this to happen. And he was wearing his dress blue uniform. No other policeman who testified, they came in suits. He wore his dress blue uniform, like as if to say, yeah, I'm an LAPD cop. And I said to myself, and this was 2 years before Criminal Minds, I said, someday I'm going to name a character after this guy. Wow. Just as an homage to, law enforcement, first responders, firemen, military, people who put their life on the line every day and have to take a lot of shit sometimes.
Right on.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I told that to Ed Bernero, who of course was an ex-Chicago cop, and said, I want to name my character David Rossi. And I explained to him why. He said, well, we're in, baby. And I had never met David Rossi at that time. But when I did that, it kind of came out in an article, because I think they interviewed Ed Bernero about, how did Joe Mantegna come up with this name of David Rossi? And he told a story, and it was in a magazine. I get a letter sent to me from the real David Rossi, that was now retired, this cop, saying, it came to my attention that you may have named your character after me. Is this true? And I contacted him back. I said, yeah, it absolutely is true. I said, you want to get together? Of course, we got together. We became dearest of friends. He was as beautiful a human being as I thought he would be. He ultimately passed away a few years ago. But, God bless him. He was, and I even said to him, I said, David, I got to ask you, why did you wear your dress blues when you testified in that trial? No other policeman did. He said, I got to tell you. He says, when we knew the trial was going to happen, he said, the man, whoever it was, chief of police, even people in politics above him, said, they told the policemen who were going to testify, you guys might want to just go out and buy a new suit, because if we wear uniforms, it's going to antagonize a lot of people. A lot of people are going to be, the anti-police people are going to be like, oh, yeah, maybe they did have something to do with it. He says, so we should take away that onus of the uniform. And he says, I knew I was going to be the first guy to testify. And he says, I was in the bathroom getting dressed that day, and I went and bought a new suit. And I put the suit on, and I'm looking in the mirror. And he said, son of a bitch, I've been a policeman for something like 30-something years. I'm getting ready to retire. I've tried to be the best I could be at this. He says, and I'm going to go now in front of the world and deny the fact of who I really am and do for a living. He said, the hell with this. He took off the suit, put on his dress blues, and showed up at was the court that day that way. And of course, nobody's said anything. They were like, okay, that's Dave. And that's what he did. And I said, well, Dave, now I know I made the right choice.
There you go, man.
His character after.
Right on.
So,
God, great story. Great story. We'll end with baseball here.
Yeah.
The new rules.
Right.
What do you think?
Well, it's always, I'll go back to this. It'll relate to this. In I believe it was 88. It was the first Cub night game.
Night game,
right?
Yeah. Rained out.
I was doing the play Speed the Plow at the time on Broadway with Madonna and Ron Silver at the time. I get a call from the New York Times asking me, they knew I was a Cub fan. They knew the whole thing about bleacher bums. They said, we thought you'd be a good choice to write the op-ed page for the New York Times for the Cubs' first night game, for that edition. And of course, the game got rained out and they did it the next time. But I said, oh, God, great. What an honor. And you can find it online. So wow. I wrote the op-ed page for the New York Times all about the Cubs' first night game. And then what I wrote, just to cut to the chase in a nutshell, what I basically said is, there's been a lot of talk about it. And some people are saying, oh, man, you're ruining Wrigley Field. They're putting lights on. It's the only place that didn't have lights. I says, I got to look at it this way. When I was a little kid, my grandfather would say, when I was little, I come by the Wrigley Field over here, and the walls were like wood, and they look like this. And I'd say, oh, that's great. That's great, Gramps. How about a hot dog? And then my dad would say, oh, I remember when I used to come to Wrigley Field, there's this, and this, and this. And I'd say, oh, yeah, that's great. I said, how about a hot dog? I said, no, I think if I brought my daughters to the Wrigley Field and said, look, you see those lights? When I was a kid, when we was here, they didn't exist. These lights weren't here. We were the only team to play only daylight baseball. And I expect my daughters to come and say, oh, yeah, that's great. How about a hot dog? And then it made me realize that's what nostalgia is. Those are those shared experiences you have with those of you who experience, just like we do with music. You experience it at that time and you share that with those. But that doesn't mean you can't evolve the next thing. So it had to happen because I would talk to the players, and as you well know, often they would say, we might have won it sooner than 108 years.
Yeah.
You have to fly in at 3 o'clock in the morning and play a day game the next day, where
right.
Nobody else had to do that. He says that maybe if it costs you 4 games even a year, that could be the difference between first place and third place.
Yep, right.
So you think about it. So to answer your question, so it goes the same thing. I even remember when they put the big TV screens up at Wrigley. And I remember talking to Ricketts about it. And Ricketts says, what do you think of these big screens? He says, some people kind of wrote and said we're ruining the ballpark. I said, Tom, I said, I came in not knowing what to expect. I saw the replays on it. I saw all this stuff. I said, all those people who complained about it, I say, take it down for a season and see.
Right.
You'll have people going nuts, like, wait a minute, we love them seeing that. Right, I said, you still got the old scoreboard. The guys are still putting it up.
There you go.
I said, sometimes you got to move with the time. These little kids, they want that. They grew up with cell phones and stuff. They want to see that. And I said, and I see it and I love it.
I love it too. Yeah.
So to answer your question about the rules, I think the clock, I think that's not a bad idea. I mean, it helps move the game around.
Got you. They were taking too long. The analytics.
They get used to it. The bigger bases, we'll see if it works better for the players, and they feel it gives them the runners get to the base that a tenth of a second quicker, or makes the double play easier for the. I don't know. Moving the shift around. Let's see, but
I like that.
The sport should evolve.
Yeah, it has to, man. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and also doesn't the National League has designated hitter now too?
They
right?
do, yeah. So,
and I thought that's about time. I mean, because it's like how often can you have one league do one thing and one league do the other?
And who wants to see a pitcher hit? I mean, there's a couple that can hit, but if you even go to like high school and college, they're DHing there. So pitchers aren't even playing then. So why have them playing the bigs, man?
Right. They're not all going to be like the Japanese guy for the Angels.
No. Or Fergie Jenkins hitting home runs,
Exactly.
They're not. So, yeah, I'm with it too. I think it speeds up the game, and the game started slowing down with all the analytics anyway. It became too much. It's like, pitchers out on the mound.
All for it. Yeah. And that's what I ultimately said at the end of the op-ed page. I said, so They can put in lights, they can put in TV screens, they can do this, they can do this. But at the end of the day, it's still 9 guys out in the field, playing baseball against 9 other guys. And I said that the integrity of the sport, that's what it's about.
You got that right.
And I'll tell you, there's one little thing that really brought it home. What's great about this game is, that in Bleacher Bums, there's a character who's blind, and I conceived the plays. I knew who all the characters were going to be, and I based it on these 3 blind guys that always used to sit up in the bleachers where I used to sit. There were 3 of them. One guy had a cowbell, other guy had a radio, would listen to the play-by-play. And I remember I was interviewing Brickhouse at the time, getting research on the play, and I was talking about how we're going to have this blind character. And he said to me, there was this one blind guy, he says, who would come to the ballpark every day, a huge fan. He said, finally they had this operation, but they were able to kind of give him partial sight. And the guy had the operation. So Brickhouse really wanted to talk to him about his experience of seeing a baseball game for the first time, where he actually saw it.
Yeah.
And so he said he came to the park, Wrigley Field, saw the game, met with Brickhouse. And Brickhouse said, so tell me, he goes, what was it like? Because up to this time, baseball to you was only something you heard, He said 2 things. He said, green, the color green, was so much more than I expected. That it's this whole expanse is this beautiful green color. He says that. He says, but the other thing was that the men, they're normal sized. He says, when you're blind and all you do is come to this ballpark and you hear the roar of the crowd and you hear what's going on in the back and them screaming when a home run is hit or it's sliding. He says, you're imagining that these men playing the game are behemoths and that they're giants and that they're all 10 feet tall and that they're much, much, much bigger than you are. And so that's your image. He says, so to see that they were just normal men. So that's interesting. It wasn't disappointing, but just like,
yes.
And I thought, how beautiful is that?
Profound. Yeah.
And in a way, when you think about it, as kids, that's the way we see them. We see them as giants.
Larger than life characters.
Yeah, larger than life characters. And even though we know they're not, and if we've been born without vision, that's the way we would have, that would have been locked in our heads. They're always going to be these superhuman kind of people. And that's beautiful. The beauty of the game.
Yeah. Wow. Are you going to the Cubs game next week when they come into town?
I'll see. I'm going to try to do that. Yeah, and then I got to see where I'm at on those days they're here. I knew they were coming, but I am going to be at Wrigley Field, and I'm going to throw out the first pitch and sing the 7th on May 31st.
Oh, perfect.
Because I go. I usually try to, after I do the Memorial Day concert in DC, I try to work my way back to Chicago, which I'm going to do.
Perfect.
And I'm going to go see it then. But are you going to go to a game when they're here?
Well, I'm going to be out there. So let me know what day you're out there.
Okay, let me see, because I have to look at the schedule. Yeah. Because I know I have to go out of town on this other show to do the
okay, perfect.
Doing the outdoor channel. I just got to make sure that it wasn't, those travel days were the same day. I haven't had time to even look at. What are the dates the Cubs are here? Do you know?
They're next Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
This
14th, 15th. It's a 14th.
Oh, the one this coming weekend.
Yeah. They're in early.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I know one of them days is my daughter's birthday. I know, so we'll see. If I can do it, I'll let you know, though, Joe.
Let me know, Joe. Thanks again, man, for coming on. This is awesome.
My pleasure, man.
I can talk to you all day, man.
I got you. So, well, there'll be other times. We're not done with each other,
No doubt, Joe.
See you in person next time. All right?
Yeah, you got it. All right, I'll see you soon, pal.
See you, buddy. Give my life to the wife, and I'll
I sure do the same. I will, man. Take care, pal. See ya.
This moment was brought to you by SanoFilms.com, the place to buy This Old Cub DVDs, posters, and some real cool t-shirts. So, that's SanoFilms.com. Check it out. This is our Cracker Jack segment where I surprise call somebody. And today, I'm going to call my mom. Here we go. Cracker Jack.
This call is being recorded.
Hello?
Mom.
Sunshine, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm coming along. It's Saturday morning.
It sure is. You're on my Cracker Jack segment, so the call is being recorded. You're my Cracker Jack guest this week.
Well, and you know how being interviewed I'm not comfortable with. So fire away and we'll see what happens.
Right. Well, speaking of let's go back to, was it 1969 when the Chicago Tribune did an interview with you?
Oh, yes. I believe it was then. And I learned a hard lesson. Don't talk to a reporter, okay? Never. Just stay away. Keep your mouth shut.
Can you tell me what happened there? Like, did they come to our house? How did it go down?
Yeah, it was actually, it was a wonderful time. The spirits for everyone, at home, the family. It was just a great time. And so the reporter called and asked to come out and do an interview. And I thought, well, okay, because everything's great. And so when I started talking to him, what happened is the wonderful life that I was experiencing when I started to talk about it, and there was humor in it, which I thought, he wrote it down, and yet when it was put into print, it definitely looked different. And and I had shared some funny things about your father that we always would laugh about, but not in the paper. So I learned a lesson.
Yes. What was it that you said, Mom?
Well, your father was always a hypochondriac. And so if somebody got, and the irony is he had because he was diagnosed as a diabetic, but he continued. If somebody had a sore throat, he had a sore throat. And, excuse me, my voice.
Right.
And so if someone else had an ulcer, he started drinking, some kind of stomach acid stuff. And then he'd have a ring around his mouth. But then he had hemorrhoids.
Is this the stuff you shared? Or
Yes. And then,
all right, well,
I don't know if I shared the hemorrhoid story, but
I think you did.
With the reporter, I don't. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, Christmas morning he woke up. His hemorrhoids were bothering him, and so he immediately called the team physician, Dr. Zucker. Instead of saying Merry Christmas, he talks about his hemorrhoids, and but he called Dr. Zucker on a lot of things. And that was not very good to put that in the paper either. So, and then, he would always take his temperature. That when we were going together in high school, he'd come up to visit, and he found out where my mother kept the thermometers, and he'd take his temperature. And I don't know how many times he broke them and put them right back. So when we'd go to use them, they were broken. So my mother had to constantly be buying thermometers. So those were the things that we used to laugh about him, and he would too. But like I said, when you get it in print, and I didn't mean to embarrass him or anything, but it came out that way. So never.
Yes, I get that. Now, how you were telling it, and then did you think he was going to print it, or did you thought, that interview was good?
I thought the interview I thought he picked up the atmosphere in the house, really. The happiness. And like I said, just being, and then of course, instead of putting word to word, they can change their things around, take some things out of context. And so here again was not a good move.
So did that come out on the front page of the sports?
Oh, that I don't remember. He's a regular columnist for the sports. I think it was Rappaport was his last name.
No, it wasn't Ron Rappaport. I know Ron. I mean, was it Ron? No, Ron was the Sun Times. Ron was the Sun Times. Yeah.
Okay, well then, I don't want to put the wrong name.
Ron, I don't think would have put that in.
Well, anybody would do it. If the person opens their mouth and says it,
That's true.
Yeah. Why would you let that go by out when you're interviewing, you're out to interview Ron Santo's wife, and she says those things, you're going to put it in the paper.
That's true. Now, what was the reaction when it came out? What yours and Dad's?
I don't remember your father being that upset, but I was totally and felt so bad. And then there were friends who said, Judy, how could you have said that? And that was true. So anyway, never happened again because I never had you're my only next interview. You. Yes,
that's right. But, you did keep things real, though, Mom. I have to say, back then. I mean, I remember even like when I was in grade school, and I guess I forgot my lunch one day, and you showed up at my school in slippers and a robe, and you just walked out of the kitchen. You didn't care.
Wait a minute. I did not have my robe on.
Okay.
I would never do that. Okay.
Right.
I had those slippers that could be used as flip flops too. Okay. It's just.
That's true.
Is that the day you walked away from school?
No, that was another time. You talk about when you dropped me off in second grade at Pleasant Ridge, and this is the difference of kids back then versus kids today. Like the parents would walk them into the school. Someone pick. You just dropped me off. I go into the school, and they're having a nap time or something because I was so sure. I tried to look over the window of the door, and I saw no one, and so I panicked and thought the school was closed. and I went home. Remember, I got picked up by a gas guy from 76.
I know. And
what the hell, kid?
And then I got called and was chastised as being a bad mother.
Did you really?
Oh yeah, the gas station man was mad at me. Oh, he was angry with me. Yes.
Who was?
How could you? What kind of the gas station man attendant?
Oh, when he dropped me off.
That I had dropped you off and left, and I'm not thinking you're going to leave the school.
Of course not.
I'm thinking everything's fine. Okay. So anyway, yes, but I would never. I would not go into that. Is your misinterpretation? Because I would never go into school in my bathrobe. Okay.
No, that was another time. I think that was later, and I remember the slippers, and me, me. I'm just like thinking, I'm trying to gather the memories, but it was funny. It was just the difference. I was trying to say how you kept it real, though. You didn't really. You did, and we had a real life. We had we were like we didn't think much of.
Right, because number one, you guys grew up with baseball, and your father being a ball player, and the notoriety. So it was part of your everyday life. It was people on the outside world who looked and thought, "Oh, this is terrific," and whereas that was our normal life. The same thing with. I grew up with your father, in high school, and he always played sports. Excuse me.
Right. Yeah.
And he was always an exceptional athlete. He made All-City on all three sports.
Yeah.
So here again, it was an example of that was my life. So going to Chicago.
When did you meet Dad? Like, what year was it in high school you met him?
It was, now you're going to ask for a year.
You don't have to, whatever, yeah. I
was a freshman and he was a sophomore. And he was the kind of, everybody, all the girls had a crush on him, me included. So it came time to be a turnabout dance. And I thought, and I was encouraged by my friends too. Go ask him. But he's in study hall with a bunch of his friends, and I went up and asked him to go to the dance. And then later on, I don't remember him responding then. I heard he didn't want to go. So it was like the same scenario. Here he is in the study hall with his friends, and I went up and said, I hope I said I don't want to go with you either. But I can't remember. All I know is I said, okay, we're not going. And then it was a year later. My next door neighbor was the same year as your father. His name was Dennis, and your father and some friends were there visiting him, and I was outside, and he asked Dennis, "Who is that?" So that is when I was a sophomore. He was a junior, and we started to go out. And
that's amazing. And then You got now. He got signed by the Cubs after senior year because they didn't have the draft then. And do you remember that time? Like, because how far after that was when he signs with the Cubs, and then Vivian, his mom, says get a physical with our family doctor. Do you remember all that?
Yes. And
you were there when he got the phone call from the doctor, right?
Right, I was. And
tell me about that.
He was devastated, absolutely devastated, and his emotions and everything. His dream was over. He wasn't going to be a professional baseball player. And so by the time then it sunk in and he got the attitude, he was going to do it. And he did.
That's amazing. Didn't you guys go to the library or something? And
no, what we did eventually is to learn about it, went down to one of the hospitals in Seattle, and they had like classes on studying how to live with diabetes. And your father discovered if he would exercise before having blood work done, his blood sugar would be normal. So Seattle's loaded with hills. So he ran up and down this hill before going in there and having a blood test. So it came out normal. I mean, but he was just deceiving himself. And then also in one of those classes, a lady fainted. She had an insulin reaction. So that really upset him too.
Wow. And that was 19. What's that?
I'm sorry. So that's why he decided he's not telling anyone that he was a diabetic.
Right. So he kept that. So that's 1958, right? After seeing you're still a junior though, right? So he then
right. Yeah, and then he went to San Antonio with the minor league team.
Well, here's the thing with the insulin though. When he decided he's basically doesn't have any symptoms, he was healthy before he went to the doctor, so he just felt like if I just keep exercising, this thing won't get me, and I'll deal with it when it does get me. Basically.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So he goes on to rookie ball, and then you guys get married in 1960.
After his first year in minor leagues at San Antonio.
Okay. No. Yeah. Okay. And then you
got married in January. The year after I graduated,
Wow.
The spring.
So yeah, and
now,
you go to
we were going to show I guess how grown up. We were going to Disneyland, and we were driving.
You're going to Disneyland for your honeymoon?
Yes. Well, it was new then. Okay. So
what?
Anyway,
who wanted to go see Mickey?
You know what? Hey, I would imagine we both did. It was Disneyland. It was new.
I know. Yeah.
So anyway, we were partway there, and Ron's mom called and said that the Cubs wanted him to go to spring training with the major league team. So we didn't make it to Disneyland, turned around, went back, and he went down to Arizona for spring training with the major league team.
Wow, that's amazing. And where did you go?
I stayed in Seattle, and then he thought he would go with the major league team, but they brought in Don Zimmer.
Right, that's when he had a great spring training, and they still to Houston, and Houston was the minor league team for the Cubs, and Billy Williams was there too. And so Billy got called up, and then your father got called up. And and did you you went down to San Antonio to live with him in the minor leagues, right?
No, I went to Houston to live there.
You went to Houston, yeah,
right.
And what happened? Like when he got the call, what did you do? I mean, you guys are in Houston, obviously, probably in a little apartment or something.
Right, with other ball players. and stuff, so and families. And then, he had to immediately. He got on a plane and went to meet the Cubs, my major league team. And then I was there and packed up the car, and it was shipped out to Chicago. And then I was shipped to Chicago to Midway Airport.
Airport, really?
Wow. Yeah, there was no O'Hare, so I went into Midway.
What were you thinking then? Like before, like when he was in the minors, did you know like he was gonna? Did you guys know like okay, he's gonna be a ball player? I mean, were you nervous that where's this life gonna go, or were you like all in and
no,
this is
no,
yeah,
no, it was life, and think about it, how young that is. I mean,
right.
I was just turning 19, and your father's 20. I mean, that's young.
Yeah,
and so it was just we're going on.
That's amazing. And when you got to Chicago, how did that go? I mean, you had to feel like here's this big city. I mean, obviously you guys were both city people in Seattle, but what was that like?
Oh, it didn't last that long. There were other ball players there that we knew, so they kind of would give us direction. But I wasn't there that long in this apartment that was down up by Clark Street, and it was
what was the
actually
apartment like?
Terrible. Yeah, it wasn't air conditioned in Chicago, humid.
Wow.
It looked out. The windows looked out on the roof down below. I mean, so there was sunshine didn't come in until about noon, and so I must be honest with you, I was really happy to get out of there.
Right.
Plus, I was pregnant with your brother. So
with Ronnie, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So I went to Seattle back, and he went on the road, and then the season was over.
Right, and that's when, and then he still wasn't taking any insulin yet. The diabetes didn't get to him where he needed, right?
No.
So
right
now he goes into 61, and you're pregnant. You have Ronnie in
right
in February.
I had Ronnie in Seattle, yeah.
In Seattle, okay, and then you find a place in Chicago with another ball player, right? That had a little daughter,
wife,
and you.
Yes, and we had rented this house. We shared it, right 2 houses away from the L train tracks. So every time it went by, the whole house shook. And I don't know why. They got the good room, and we got this small room. In order to get across the room, we had to walk across the bed.
Why did he
moved out of there?
Who was the guy? Who was the guy that you roomed with?
He was a pitcher. His name was Joe Mantegna, a wonderful, wonderful man. And so then,
why did he get the bigger room? Why did he get the bigger room and you guys got the smaller one?
Who knows? Okay.
Okay.
And then we couldn't take the railroad tracks, so we left there and rented a house in Bellwood, Illinois. Again, we got the smaller room and they got the big room, but that's the way it was. And then.
Wow.
And from then on, I'm trying to think, we went back one more time to Seattle and decided this going back and forth, that's just too much. And first rented a house in Elmwood Park.
Elmwood Park, and that's the Matarisi's helped you with all that.
They were wonderful. They were family.
Yeah.
And,
they were the family that when we got to Chicago, that Dad had a cousin or something that knew the Matarisi's, and they had you guys meet. How did that roll?
Your father had an uncle in Tacoma, Washington, who knew this man in Chicago, and he called the Matarisi's and said, "I'd like you to invite this young man over for dinner." And so that's how it was. Lorraine had him over for dinner, met them, and from then on, they were just absolutely incredible and friends forever.
That's my godfather, Big Joe. Yeah.
Big Joe.
Big Joe. And now,
Lorraine.
when you were in Lorraine, the godmother, Lorraine, they were awesome. Did when you got to Elmwood Park, now, what was that like? Being Italian, Elmwood Park, everyone knows Elmwood Park's all Italian, and some of the big boys are out there.
some of the gangsters. Yes.
Yes.
And then it was in education. It came from Seattle. And in Seattle we just, ethnically, you didn't think about, this person's Italian, this one's Irish or whatever. We just went all to, a school together. So to get there and see it's so ethnically divided, the city was mind-boggling, really. And and I had someone come up and introduce himself, and when walking away, he said, "And we're Italian too." And I thought, I don't really care, But that was the city, and I think the farther east you go, like New York, it's even more emphasized by different communities. Yeah. So,
but you guys were embraced by everyone there, and so it was almost kind of like they had. Yeah, I mean that had to be cool. A lot of love there. Did Dad have to? You guys have to go to any weddings and stuff like that? I mean,
that was yours. Actually, that year when we rented that house in Elmwood Park, which we had a city employee next door to us, and Chicago in the heat, we had an air conditioning unit in the window facing his house, and you had to legally turn off those air conditioners if they bothered a neighbor after 11 o'clock. Well, he was such an ornery guy. We had to turn it off, and it was so hot. So anyway, we weren't there that long.
Right.
But that's the year, too, your father, the diabetes began to bother him. And so he went to a doctor, and he left with insulin, a needle, and everything. And then from then on, he dealt with it. But he still didn't tell the team. They still didn't know. And he did it on himself. Took care of himself.
That's amazing. So he started losing weight in 61, and that's kind of like when he knew like something was wrong.
Right. So it's another thing when you're that. If you have a sore or something, they don't heal that well. So all of those indicators, started to show up.
Yeah.
So he went to a specialist. Yeah.
And then he said then it was that 62 season was really him regulating, which was a tough season because he had to do the night versus the day. How was all that?
Right.
I mean,
actually, though, that year he was sophomore of the year in the big leagues, in the National League.
In 61, right? Yeah.
Okay, he should have made Rookie of the Year, but I forget who made it. But
Billy did in 61 because he came up half the season, and the half the season kind of took away him being Rookie of the Year for the next year. So that they would have had 3 Rookies of the Year. They would have had Dad, Billy, and then Kenny Hubbs, which is amazing. But yeah,
right.
Well, I'm gonna keep crackerjacking you throughout this show because you got so much to talk about and so many great stories. One last thing I want to end with you is in 69 when they started to kind of, the Mets were catching them in September. Was it hard for you to watch the games?
It was painful. You kept thinking every day, okay, it's going to turn around, and it didn't. I had even bought a rollaway bed that for all the company that was going to come and visit us as we got ready to play in the World Series. Because, then there were no playoffs. And it was heartbreaking. And just, it stunned us, actually. And actually never got over it. Really. We didn't get over it. Yeah.
No, we didn't. We didn't. And that was actually the first year that there was going to be a playoff because they changed the divisions in 69. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you have more history about it than I do. Okay.
No, I know. I mean, I'm just taking that was tough, man. That was tough. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Well, Mom, it was so nice talking about this. Thank you for being my second crackerjack.
Your prize.
Your prize. Okay. Your surprise. The surprise. Yeah.
My
and the prize.
Okay.
Yeah, both. Yeah. Okay. The surprise prize.
Okay.
All right, Mom. I love you. I'll talk to you
later.
I
love you too. Okay. Bye-bye.
He says love you too. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wow. Yeah. Great to talk to my mom. So many things different back then, for ball players, what they went through. I mean, they were like regular regular people with a regular job, just trying to make it very different today. But that's what made them so special. Just love talking to her about that. And, well, that's the end of the second episode. So stay tuned for episode 3. It's coming around the corner. We're going to have a great surprise guest again, interview, and another Cracker Jack. So stay tuned. Thanks for listening.